Huh?
Hi, Manvi. Welcome to Many Questions, the show where we ask each guest many questions about themselves and their mental health journey. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, Grace. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. We're staying really busy at MQ. Got a lot of great projects that we're currently doing, so there's a lot to do, definitely.
MQ is doing amazing, amazing work. I'm just glad that I'm able to be a part of this today.
So I guess to start things off, how did you get involved with mental health? Because I know that you're an activist working
Mhm.
for also is it UN and the UNICEF?
Yeah. So I was a part of the Young People's Action Team at Generation Unlimited at UNICEF, India. Yeah, I work with them. I've also been a contributor with UNICEF for a lot of mental health initiatives. One of them being the Pen Pal initiative, which was really great. How I got involved really is it all started. If I start to trace it back, it like kind of all falls in line. But I was diagnosed with OCD and depression, and after that, I gradually, at some point, started to write about my journey, my struggle with the mental health conditions, and how I feel. And I didn't think it would resonate with anybody, but it somehow ended up resonating with people. A lot of publications took that up and they published it. People started to reach out to me and say that it's actually helping them. My story is like a survival guide for them, which was really a big thing to me if somebody says that to me. So that's how it started. That's how I got to know that there's actually so much that needs to be done in mental health. And from there, I started applying to places. I started meeting more people, like minded people who were going through their own mental health struggles. And I guess that's how it all just shot up. That's where the head start happened.
Or at least you're using your situation for good and it be able
Yeah.
to post people in the right direction. But how did you first discover that you had OCD and depression?
My mother was the one who's had it, and at that point in time we didn't really have much of an idea of what the condition is, but because she had it, because I spent a lot of time with her, even in therapy sessions, so I kind of knew what OCD feels like. I kind
Mm.
of knew what the anxiety associated with OCD feels like. And so that's when, during the lockdown, it was the COVID lockdown. That's when I finally had that anxiety. I was able to recognize it, that, there's difference between stress and tension and anxiety, which kind of starts to tamper with your daily life. So that's what happened. I had past experiences, with my mother's condition. And so I knew that this is not the normal stress or tension which would go away in a while. So that's when I told my parents that, I think this needs professional treatment. In India, it's not very normal for parents to be, for anybody to be very open to the idea of therapy, to the idea of seeking professional help when it comes to mental health, when it comes to psychiatry. Gratefully, my parents were open to that. So yeah, so I think that's how I recognized. I went to, professionals, and that's when I was diagnosed.
I guess it's very fortunate that you have parents that were able to understand and get help as soon as possible. But I guess that puts you in a really like unique situation to have experience of therapy from such a young age. A lot of people discover later on in life, maybe from like a teenager onwards, and then get help later on. So did you find that having that experience earlier in life was beneficial to you, like that kind of therapy experience?
It absolutely was. It absolutely was, because I had, there's one thing that there's stereotypes, right?
Mm.
That therapy does not really work. It's just, you go in a room and somebody's sitting there and you just like talk to them, and there's a lot of stereotypes related to therapy. Then I was lucky enough, I was fortunate enough to have had that opportunity to be in a therapist's room and see what actually goes on in there, and see how my mother benefited from that, see how it helped her kind of like remove that suffering from her life. So I had a very strong evidence of how therapy works, and so that's why, that was one of the biggest advantages of having been to therapy and having known therapy as a concept from a very young age. That when I finally felt like something was not wrong with me, so because of that experience, I knew where to go. I knew that there is a solution to what's happening to me, and I knew where the solution lay. So that's I think how it benefited me.
Yeah, it's good that you had that experience because maybe if you didn't, how your life could have been completely different.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people spend a lot of years. I remember with my mom, We spent a lot of years not knowing that this is something that needs
Mm.
attention from a psychiatrist, and not something that needs attention from maybe a general physician. That's how alien the concept of psychiatry and the concept of mental health was in those days. But I think it's grown a lot. I think people are more aware of it and trying to accept it more now. So yeah.
Why do you think that there was so much stigma surrounding mental health?
There's two ways of looking at it. One, when you tell somebody as a patient or as a person who's living with it, when you tell somebody that you're suffering from a mental health condition or
Mm.
just poor mental well-being, and the initial reaction is, even today, I get on call with a lot of time my teachers, some teachers or somebody you kind of like tend to look up to, and you get on a call with them, you haven't spoken to them in years, school teachers I'm talking about, and then you tell them what's happening with you, and how you were diagnosed with a mental health condition and now you're a mental health activist, and the initial reaction is that, mental health condition, what are you talking about? Are you serious? You were such a strong girl, how could you have a mental health condition? And that's when you realize that, okay, the stigma is still not gone. It's just that I've surrounded myself with people who are more open minded and who work in the mental health sector. So it's kind of like that. So that's one of the things why I always say that the stigma still exists. And this is a very, a very primary, I don't know, like, this is a very smaller low level of stigma that exists. There's stigma that exists at much higher levels, and that's why you don't see a lot of people who live with mental health conditions or poor mental well-being leading places.
Mm. Yes, very true.
Mental health is right now, it's not even acknowledged as health.
Mm.
People don't even realize that mental health is not something that, it does not just stand for mental illnesses. Mental health is something that everybody has. Poor mental well-being is something that every single person is going to go through at multiple times in their lives. And
Absolutely.
mental health conditions is something that 1 out of every 9 people has in the world. So I think those are just, facts that need to be acknowledged, facts that people are not aware of.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess with that, what are some of the misconceptions that you've heard about like OCD and depression?
One of the things about OCD is that people generally think that OCD is all about cleanliness.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so OCD is basically just organizing things, wanting things in place, and cleaning things again and again, wanting everything perfect all around you. That's not OCD. I mean, that is OCD, but that's not all that OCD is. There's different kinds of OCDs, and OCD is basically obsessive compulsive disorder, which means you have obsessive thoughts and you have compulsions, to act on those obsessive thoughts. And either one of those can be stronger. Obsessions can be stronger, or compulsions can be stronger. Both of them can be stronger. So it's kind of like that. But I think a big role of this, behind these misconceptions, is the media's, because the
Mm.
media is always as part of a research study, I was asked to watch a couple of movies from India, Bollywood and the South India movie industry, where we watched movies which had an element of OCD in them. And one thing that was common in all the movies was the element of cleanliness.
Oh yeah.
So I think that is one of the biggest misconceptions about depression. I think there's a misconception. We have a box that we tend to fit people who live with depression into. So you have to look a certain way, and you have to talk a certain way if you're depressed. If you do not fit in that box, then you're not depressed. Okay. And it's kind of like, it's also being weaponized nowadays. I hate it when people throw the terms OCD and depress around like slangs. So I'm in college right now, and especially in college, like, it's so annoying when all these young people will just go around using words like OCD as a slang. I'm so OCD. So it's just very annoying.
Yeah, when it's a real condition that you're living with, and
Hmm.
someone trivializes it to a case of like, oh, I just like to keep my desk tidy. I'm so OCD. It's just it really just takes away all the importance or the seriousness of the topic, and I can
Hmm.
imagine it can be very very frustrating.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It is, especially for somebody who lives with it and who's seen, what the condition can do to your mind and to your body. It's very frustrating. So while you kind of feel happy that, okay, at least people know that there's something like OCD and something like depression, but also they are trivializing it. So there has to be a midway somewhere where you acknowledge it and not trivialize it.
Absolutely. I guess as we've spoken about the misconceptions about it, how would you describe OCD and depression? Like, what does it feel like?
I think OCD, in the simplest of terms, one of the things I would really like to begin with, yeah, this is something that my therapist told me in one of my initial sessions, and it's really I think one of the truest things that you will hear about OCD. What she said was, it's not a line, it's not linear, it does not work in waves, it works in spikes. So, one day your OCD, the anxiety associated with your OCD and your OCD overall could be here. And the other day it could be here. The other second it could be here, the anxiety and the trouble that it's causing you. So
Hmm.
I think that should kind of give you the gist of how OCD affects your mind and your body. Like I said, in the simplest of ways, OCD is obsessions and compulsions. So, like I said, it's there can be certain things, and those things could be something that weren't that important to you, or maybe some things that were that important to you. For me, my OCD was all about my family, and all my obsessions were about my family, and they caused compulsions thereon, which were like, me wanting to check up on my family again and again. And when I say check up on your family, a lot of people say, what's wrong with that? Nothing's wrong with that. But when you want to do it at a rate which is very irrational, and which starts to tamper with your daily life, and which starts to mess with your mental health, that is OCD.
Hmm.
If you want to do something and you're not able to do it, and you can convince yourself that, okay, it's all right. But when you're not able to do it and it causes you a lot of anxiety, the kind, in my case, I would often throw up out of anxiety. I basically, there were days when I wouldn't be able to eat because every time I ate, I would throw up. So I think, for all the people who say that, who talk about OCD like a slang, it's not. It's really much more than that. And yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, I'm sorry you had to experience that. It's yeah, I guess it's tough because especially when it starts off with something so normal as just checking that in with your family, it's hard to see when it becomes a negative thing that you end up doing. How soon did you realize that it was going down that negative dark road?
I think it took me somewhere around 4 or 5 months
Hmm.
to realize that, it's not normal to be feeling this way, and that professional intervention is needed.
I guess with that, as you said that you have experience from your mum going through that as well, and
Yeah.
I guess you now you have that lived experience of yourself actually going through that. So if someone did have a loved one or themselves are going through like OCD, how could we support that person?
I think one of the best ways, to support somebody else who's living with OCD is to kind of try and understand their patterns. Whenever somebody lives with a mental health condition, I think they tend to, portray certain patterns,
Hmm.
certain behaviors, certain obsessions and compulsions. So while it can be very incredibly hard to understand the entire thing, I think the best thing is to try and notice and understand, from their professionals, or from them, from a conversation with them, that what is actually going on in their head, and what do they feel like. Because, like I said, everybody's OCD is very different,
Hmm.
and you can't really put it all, you can't really answer this question with a one size fits all approach. So the kind of support that worked best for me was that I would need a lot of time with myself. And I also asked my psychiatrist that, is it safe for me? I do not feel the best in my, best of my health. So is it safe for me to be spending time alone? And his answer to that was that it's safe to spend time alone, but make sure that, there's somebody checking in on you.
Hmm.
Don't go grow very distant from the people that care for you. That was the best advice I got. And to support somebody with OCD, I think just try to understand their condition. Also, another thing is, don't associate all of their behaviors with OCD, because a lot of times what happens is, you're obsessing about one thing, your obsessions and compulsions are about one thing, but people, what they do is, they think that all of your behaviors are because of your OCD, when it may not be that. OCD or any other mental health condition does make a very big part of my life and is causing me a lot of trouble. That's not the only part of me. That's not all that I am. There's more to me. So I think, while I want to be treated as somebody who's living with that mental health condition, who's living with OCD, I also want to be treated as a normal human being, who has their own mental health struggles and is dealing with them.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. Yeah, you are a human being and you go through experiences and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
yes, it could be down to the OCD, but it could be something else. You're right in what you said about one size does not fit all when it comes to treatment. That's why it's very important to try as many different treatments, because we don't really know what will work for every single person.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's really true. And I think, as a patient, as a person with lived experience, it takes a lot of time to recognize what actually works for you. It might
Mm.
take a lot of trials to recognize what actually works for you.
So you've experienced quite a challenging upbringing, I guess, with the OCD. How did you find the strength to come out and, I guess, tell your story to as many people?
One of the major reasons for actually trying to tell my story and finding the courage and strength to tell my story was kind of thinking back about the time when my mother was suffering from it,
Mm.
and thinking that if at that time I had a similar survival guide or I read a similar article that talked about this condition, I would have felt so much better, because I would have known that, okay, this is normal. This isn't something which is untreatable. This isn't something which is wrong. This is just, ultimately a health issue which is treatable, which can be fine, and which needs a little bit of support and intervention. So, that was I think the focal motivation. That was, I think, where I got most of the strength to write all those articles from. And yeah, that's basically how it started. And I've had a very supportive family from the beginning till the end, till now. So yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. And I guess you're also an MQ ambassador, so that's
Yes.
fantastic. I'm glad to have you here as an ambassador. Um,
Thank you so much.
I guess that's a great place to end on. Well, thank you so much for chatting with us. But if anybody did want to get in touch with you, how could they do so?
So I think the best way to get in touch with me is through LinkedIn and Instagram. And yeah, I'm happy to, maybe, this video is going to have a description or something. I'm happy to provide my usernames, and you can just put it up there and they can get in touch with me.
Well, have a great day, and it was amazing talking to you.
Perfect. It was really great talking to you. Thank you for this insightful discussion, really.